She was sitting right across from me, smiling, laughing, completely relaxed, while her phone buzzed in her purse, and I knew exactly who was texting her. My brother was mid-sentence, defending his wife with that familiar certainty. "Emily would never do something like that," he said, his voice calm, confident, almost proud. "You're imagining things." The words landed like blows, because just an hour earlier I had seen the messages. Not hints. Not vague flirting. Explicit words. Plans. Inside jokes that only exist when something has already crossed the line. Emily met my eyes for half a second and smiled softly, the way someone smiles when they know they're safe. When they know no one will touch them. She looked at me like I was irrelevant. Like the truth in my head didn't matter because it had nowhere to go. I opened my mouth, then closed it. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. If I spoke now, I'd be accused of snooping, of lying, of trying to ruin a marriage. If I stayed quiet, the lie would keep breathing. My mother laughed awkwardly and changed the subject. Someone poured more wine. The conversation moved on, leaving me frozen in that moment, watching my brother trust the woman who was actively betraying him, watching a room full of people protect a story that wasn't real. I realized then how alone the truth can be. I had seen everything, and somehow, that made me the problem. From the outside, my brother and Emily had the kind of marriage people pointed to as proof that love still worked. They were the couple everyone compared themselves to. Social media perfect. Coordinated outfits. Anniversary posts filled with long captions about gratitude and growth. Emily knew exactly how to curate that image, what to share, what to hide, how to make devotion look effortless. And Jason believed in it completely. He was proud of her. Proud of them. At family gatherings, Emily played her role flawlessly. She remembered birthdays, brought thoughtful gifts, asked the right questions. She touched Jason's arm when she laughed, leaned into him when she spoke, like she was anchoring herself to him in front of everyone. It looked natural, convincing, real, and we all bought it. Whenever someone joked about how lucky Jason was, Emily would smile modestly and deflect the praise. Whenever marriage came up, she talked about communication and trust like she was teaching a class. No one questioned her sincerity. Why would they? She gave them exactly what they wanted to see. That's what made it so hard to breathe after reading those messages. The contrast was violent. The woman in her phone didn't match the woman at the table. One was careful and intimate with someone else. The other was untouchable. The marriage everyone believed in wasn't just theirs. It belonged to all of us. And that made the truth unbearable. I didn't go looking for anything. That's the part no one believes, but it's the truth. Emily had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. Jason was outside grilling, and I was helping clean up from dinner. Her screen lit up once, then again. I tried to ignore it. I really did. But the name that flashed across the screen wasn't my brother's. It was a man I didn't recognize. And the preview wasn't innocent. Last night was hard to forget. My stomach dropped. I stood there frozen, staring at the phone like it had just accused her out loud. Another message came in before I could move. Then another. Familiar tone. Intimate. Confident. Not the kind of messages people misinterpret. I told myself to put it down, to walk away. But my hand was already shaking as I unlocked the screen. Her passcode was Jason's birthday. That detail still makes me sick. The thread was long. Weeks long. Plans disguised as errands. Jokes that only make sense when there's history. Words she never used around my brother. Words you don't send unless you feel safe doing it. I remember feeling like I'd stepped into a version of reality I wasn't supposed to see. Like I'd crossed a line just by knowing. When Emily came back into the room, towel on her head, smiling like nothing existed beneath the surface, I understood something awful. The messages weren't a mistake. They were a second life. And I was the only one who had seen it. Once I knew, I couldn't unsee what had always been there. The red flags didn't arrive dramatically. They were small, dismissible, perfectly timed to be explained away. Emily always kept her phone face down. Always. If Jason picked it up to check the time, she'd reach for it casually, smiling, like it was nothing. When it buzzed late at night, she'd step into another room to answer. Work stuff, she'd say. Group chat. There were the sudden errands that never quite lined up. Grocery runs that took hours. Last-minute plans that changed without explanation. Trips she insisted Jason didn't need to come on. Everyone called it independence. I called it convenience. She was affectionate, but strategically so. In public. In front of family. Her marriage looked strongest when it was being watched. Behind closed doors, Jason mentioned feeling like something was off, then laughed it away before anyone could respond. No one wants to be the first to doubt a perfect story. I remembered how defensive she got over harmless questions. How quickly she reframed concern as criticism. How easily she made people feel embarrassed for even asking. All of it had been visible. All of it had been ignored. Because red flags don't matter when people are invested in the lie. They become quirks. Personality traits. Nothing worth naming. Until one day, they form a pattern you can't pretend not to see. And by then, you're already standing alone with it. After that night, the truth lived in my body like a weight I couldn't set down. I replayed the messages over and over in my head, terrified I'd imagine something, desperate to remember every word exactly as it was. But memory isn't evidence. And screenshots I didn't take might as well have never existed. I had seen everything, and yet I had nothing I could safely put on the table. If I said something, I'd be asked how I knew. Why I touched her phone. Why I crossed that line. The story would shift instantly from her betrayal to my behavior. I could already hear it. That's not proof. You violated her privacy. You don't know the context. Emily knew this too. I saw it in how relaxed she was around me afterward. She didn't act cautious. She acted untouchable. Because she understood the rules better than I did, truth without permission is treated like a crime. I started doubting myself, not the messages, but my right to speak about them. Was it my place? Was it worth destroying my brother's peace over something I couldn't prove cleanly? The questions circled endlessly, exhausting and paralyzing. Knowing something this big without being able to prove it doesn't make you powerful. It makes you trapped. The truth sat there, real and heavy, while I stood on the outside of it, watching a lie move freely through the family, untouched. The fear didn't arrive all at once. It settled in quietly, shaping every thought before I could finish it. I imagined the moment of speaking 100 times, and every version ended the same way. Jason's face tightening. Emily looking wounded, shocked, offended. The family turning toward me, not with curiosity, but with suspicion. I wouldn't be the messenger of truth. I'd be the disruptor. The problem. Fear isn't just about consequences. It's about certainty. And the only thing I was certain of was that once I spoke, there would be no undoing it. I couldn't unring that bell. I couldn't give my brother his innocence back if I was wrong, or if he refused to believe me. I was afraid of being dismissed. Afraid of being labeled dramatic, intrusive, bitter. Afraid that, even if the truth eventually surfaced, I'd still be remembered as the one who started it. Fear has a way of convincing you that silence is the more responsible choice. Emily sensed it. I could feel it in the way she met my eyes, calm and unbothered. She wasn't worried because she knew I was weighing the cost, and she was betting I'd choose myself over the truth. And for a while, she was right. I stayed quiet not because I lacked courage, but because fear dressed itself up as protection. Protection for my brother. Protection for my family. Protection from becoming the villain in a story no one wanted to hear. I didn't even have to accuse anyone for the pressure to start. It came disguised as concern. My mother pulled me aside one afternoon and asked if everything was okay between me and Emily. Her tone was careful, rehearsed. When I hesitated, she sighed and said, "You know how sensitive Jason is. I just don't want unnecessary tension." Unnecessary. Like the truth was clutter. Others were less subtle. An aunt warned me not to misread things that aren't my business. A cousin joked that I had always been too observant for my own good. Each comment carried the same message. Whatever I thought I knew, I should keep it to myself. No one asked what I had seen. They didn't want details. Details make things real. They preferred assumptions about my motives, my emotions, my stability. Silence was framed as maturity. Speaking up was framed as cruelty. Emily didn't need to say anything. The family did it for her. They circled instinctively, protecting the version of events that kept everyone comfortable. I was encouraged to let things go, to trust the marriage, to stop carrying things that weren't mine. What they never said out loud was clear anyway. If I spoke, I'd be choosing conflict. I'd be choosing to fracture something they were invested in preserving. And families have a way of punishing the person who refuses to play along. By then, silence wasn't just my fear. It was a collective demand. That's when the isolation became complete. It wasn't announced. No one said, "We're choosing her over you." It happened quietly, through absence. Fewer calls. Shorter replies. Invitations that came late, or not at all. I'd hear about family dinners after they happened, vacations once photos were already posted. When I did show up, the air felt different. Conversations stayed shallow. People avoided eye contact when topics drifted too close to anything real. I was included in form, not in spirit. Present, but peripheral. Emily, on the other hand, was everywhere. Laughing easily. Confident. Untouched. She spoke freely, knowing no one would challenge her. The more isolated I became, the safer she looked. Silence had shifted the balance completely in her favor. I stopped sharing my thoughts because no one asked for them. I stopped explaining myself because explanations require listeners. The hardest part wasn't being doubted anymore, it was being erased. Reduced to someone whose presence made things uncomfortable. I realized then that isolation is a tool. It discourages truth without ever arguing against it. It teaches you that knowing something dangerous will cost you connection. And it works. I was alone not because I was wrong, but because I refused to pretend I didn't know. The longer I stayed quiet, the more confident the lie became. Emily stopped being careful. She talked openly about her marriage like it was unbreakable, almost daring anyone to question it. She shared stories that painted her as devoted, attentive, endlessly supportive. Each time someone nodded along, the lie grew thicker, stronger, harder to cut through. Jason echoed her words without realizing it. He defended her automatically, even when no one was accusing. People loved to assume things he'd say, shaking his head. Watching him protect a version of his life that wasn't real felt unbearable. The lie wasn't just surviving, it was recruiting. Silence trained everyone. It taught them what topics were safe and which ones to avoid. Doubt became impolite. Curiosity became disruptive. And Emily learned exactly how far she could go without consequence. She stopped watching me altogether. That was the clearest sign. When someone no longer fears being exposed, they don't bother pretending. I had become invisible, neutralized by my own restraint. What scared me most was how normal it all felt. How quickly everyone adjusted to a reality built on omission. Lies don't always need defenders. Sometimes all they need is time and cooperation. By staying silent, I wasn't just witnessing the lie. I was helping it grow. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't planned. But there was a moment when staying quiet became impossible. We were all together again, another family gathering, another performance. Jason was talking about the future. Plans. Commitments. He mentioned something Emily had supposedly done for him on a night I knew she wasn't there. Not maybe. Not possibly. I knew where she was. Who she was with. Emily smiled and nodded, effortlessly adjusting the story to fit his words. And something inside me snapped, not loudly, but completely. I realized that every second I stayed silent, I was helping her rewrite his life in real time. Jason looked so sure. So safe inside a lie he didn't consent to. My hands started shaking. My chest felt tight, like my body had decided before my mind could catch up. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't scared either. I was done participating. I interrupted him mid-sentence. Not with an accusation. Not with emotion. Just one sentence that didn't belong in her story. That's not what happened. The room froze. Emily's smile faltered, just for a second. Jason turned toward me, confused, searching my face. I knew then there was no soft exit. No way back to silence. The truth had finally reached the surface. Whatever came next, I had crossed the line fear had drawn for me. And for the first time, the lie wasn't the loudest thing in the room. Once I spoke, everything unraveled faster than I expected. Jason asked me what I meant. His voice wasn't angry, it was careful, like he was afraid of what the answer might do to him. Emily laughed softly and said I must be confused, that I'd misunderstood something trivial. Her tone was calm, practiced. She still believed this was manageable. So I told him what I'd seen. I didn't embellish. I didn't accuse. I described the messages exactly as they were, dates, words, the familiarity she couldn't fake away. I admitted how I'd seen them, knowing it would be used against me. The room held its breath. Emily interrupted me twice, then stopped. Jason pulled out his phone, scrolling, checking things he'd never thought to question before. His face changed slowly, like someone watching their house crack from the inside. "What about this night?" he asked her quietly. She didn't answer right away. That pause did more damage than any confession could have. It was the moment her control slipped. She tried to explain, to reframe, to soften, but the rhythm was gone. The truth had found air. No shouting. No scene. Just the heavy realization settling in, piece by piece. The messages didn't need to be read out loud. Their existence was enough. The truth didn't explode. It exposed. And once it did, there was no way to pretend we were all standing on solid ground anymore. The room didn't erupt. It went numb. No one knew what to do with what had just surfaced, so they tried to undo it. Shock came first, wide eyes, shallow breaths, people staring at the table, or their hands like the answers might be written there. Then denial rushed in to fill the space. My mother spoke first. "This doesn't make sense," she said, shaking her head, already searching for a version of events that wouldn't break everything. Someone else suggested there had to be a misunderstanding. A joke taken too seriously. Context missing. Anything but what was right in front of us. Emily cried, not loudly, not chaotically. Carefully. Controlled. She said she felt attacked. Exposed. She asked how anyone could trust something seen out of context. A few people nodded instinctively, relieved to be given a softer explanation to hold on to. Jason didn't say much. He stood there, silent, eyes unfocused, like his mind was trying to protect him by slowing everything down. When he finally spoke, it wasn't to accuse her or to thank me. He asked for time. Space. As if distance alone could rearrange the truth into something less devastating. Denial became collective. The same people who had demanded honesty now asked for patience. For privacy. For calm. Because accepting what had happened meant admitting how long they'd helped it continue. I watched them try to put the lie back together with shaking hands. But once something breaks inside you, pretending it hasn't doesn't fix it. Shock fades. Denial lingers. And in that space, families decide what they're willing to face and what they'd rather lose instead. The shift didn't come with apologies. It came with attention. People started listening to me in a way they never had before. When I spoke, no one interrupted. No one laughed it off or redirected the conversation. The same relatives who once told me to stay out of it now asked careful questions, their voices low, almost cautious. Not because they suddenly trusted me, but because they no longer trusted her. Emily felt it immediately. The room no longer bent around her. Compliments stopped. Sympathy thinned. Every word she said seemed to land and then hang there, waiting to be examined. She wasn't confronted outright, but the protection she'd relied on was gone. Power doesn't disappear loudly. It drains. Jason barely looked at her. When he did, it was with confusion, not anger, like he was still searching for the version of her he'd believed in. When his eyes met mine, there was something new there. Not gratitude. Not blame. Recognition. He knew I hadn't imagined it. He knew I'd been alone with it. What unsettled me most was how quickly the narrative changed. There were signs, someone said. I always felt something was off. The same things they dismissed when I named them. The truth didn't just come out, it was reclaimed by everyone else. I hadn't gained power. I had lost the burden of being doubted. And somehow, that changed everything. The consequences didn't arrive as punishment. They arrived as absence. Jason moved out quietly. No announcement, no dramatic confrontation, just a bag by the door and a silence that felt heavier than any argument. He stopped answering questions with certainty. Every plan became tentative. The confidence he used to carry was gone, replaced by something fragile and careful. Emily lost what had protected her most: automatic belief. People were polite but distant. Conversations around her became measured, cautious. Stories were met with pauses. Smiles no longer reached anyone's eyes. Nothing was said outright, but everything had changed. Trust doesn't shatter loudly, it erodes, leaving nothing solid to stand on. Our family shifted too. Some relationships never recovered. Others survived, but thinner, strained by what had been exposed. Gatherings felt different, like everyone was aware of the fault line running through the room. No one talked about it, but no one forgot it either. As for me, I wasn't celebrated. I wasn't blamed. I became a reminder of what happens when silence stops working, of the cost of knowing, of the price people pay when truth finally interrupts comfort. There were moments I wondered if things would have been easier if I'd stayed quiet. But ease isn't the same as peace. The damage wasn't caused by the truth coming out, it was caused by how long it had been allowed to live unchecked. Some consequences look like loss. Others look like clarity. I used to think that if you were right, being believed would come naturally. That truth had some kind of built-in protection. I know better now. The hardest part wasn't discovering the betrayal. It was carrying it alone while everyone else chose comfort over clarity. When people doubt you, it's tempting to assume you're mistaken, to shrink yourself, to stay quiet so you don't become the problem. But silence doesn't make lies disappear, it just gives them time. What this taught me is simple and brutal. Being doubted doesn't mean you're wrong. It often means the truth is inconvenient, disruptive, or expensive for the people around you. And they'll resist it for as long as they can. If you're the one who knows something others refuse to see, understand this. You're not crazy, dramatic, or cruel for noticing. You're early. And being early is lonely. Speaking the truth may cost you comfort, relationships, even your place in the room. But staying silent can cost someone else their reality. There's no painless choice. There's only the honest one. I don't regret telling the truth. I regret how long I believed I needed permission to say it.